World of Warcraft. I have a couple special guests with me today. We've got Lee Sparks, our design producer on World of Warcraft. Scott Mercer is our lead encounter designer for World of Warcraft. Then we have Jeff Goodman, who's one of our most seasoned game designers on World of Warcraft. He brought you such encounters as Onyxia, Cthulhu, Kale, Lady Vosh, Illidan. Basically, if it drops the best loot in the game, Jeff made the encounter. That's Jeff. So, we're not here to talk about solo player content today, or PvP with your welfare arena epics, or any of that. This path is for people who actually go out and earn their epics by killing hard bosses and dungeons. Very coordinated. So here we go. A little bit of what we're going to talk about at first is how we come up with the ideas for the dungeons that we do. So the first place is lore. An example of a dungeon that comes about because of story that's integral to the World of Warcraft would be like Black Temple. Now, all the reasons I'm about to give you for why we make a dungeon, it applies to every dungeon that we have, but some it applies even more so. So Black Temple, obviously we're not going to make Outland and not put Illidan and the Black Temple in it. Another example of a lore-driven dungeon was Dead Mines. Oh, Jeff also did Mr. Smite and Edwin Van Cleef, too. At one point, it was the best loot in the game. It was. We have one dungeon. Karazhan was another example of a lore-driven dungeon, the East Tower. Scarlet Monastery had to be there. So another reason that we'll put a dungeon in the game is that it fills some sort of gameplay void. And I'll explain this with some of the first examples. Meridon. We didn't have any dungeon that fit the level range of Meridon, so that's why we put that dungeon in the game. Ragefire Chasm is an interesting one. In our beta, we put in Stormwind Stockades. It was an idea that came about early in our alpha, and we finally implemented it in the beta. And we suddenly realized that it was a really popular dungeon and that no one on the Horde had anything to do like it. So we filled the void by putting Ragefire Chasm in Orgrimmar. Zul'Aman, an upcoming dungeon, coming in patch 2.3, it's filling the void of the lack of 10-man content beyond Karazhan. So Zul'Aman's actually going to be a progression to Karazhan. There's going to be better loot than in Karazhan, and it'll be something for people who have kind of capped out at the 10-person rating. That'll be something for them to do. So that's Zul'Aman. I like how I point the pointer at the TV like it's my remote at home or something. Zul'Gurub also filled a big gap for us. We had a lot of players wanting a dungeon that bridged the gap between UBRS and Molten Core in the original WoW, so we delivered Zul'Gurub to fill that void. The third reason that we'll put a dungeon somewhere in the game is because of geography. Basically, when we do world design in World of Warcraft, we want to spread people out to as many locations as possible. I think Outland is a good example of this. If you think about all of the different areas of Outland sort of have interesting dungeon or PvP locations in them. So geography is a big reason that we pick a dungeon. Meridon is another example. Geographically, we want to give somebody a reason to go out to the awesome zone that is Desolate. And then Wailing Caverns. We wanted a dungeon that would serve both Troll, Tauren, and Orc in their early starting experience. So we strategically placed Wailing Caverns based on location more than any other reason. There is one more reason that we'll come up with a dungeon in World of Warcraft, and that's usually just because Metzen wanted it. Metzen will come into a meeting and like, oh, I got the best idea ever, it's going to be awesome. And then we're like, oh, okay, we'll just do that instead. Okay, so the big picture, these are just some of our philosophies going into planning content for World of Warcraft in general. One is plan more than we can build. And I'm about to show you a bunch of examples that really prove that we do this. The other is expect change and adapt. So we have to, obviously everything has to be as polished as possible when it goes out the door, but we have to be willing to adapt our content and expect change based on player trends or changes in itemization or whatever's going on in PvP is going to affect what's happening in our game. So basically expect change and adapt. This is the first time that anybody's ever seen this. This is the original content plan for World of Warcraft, like back in 2001. That was the first map that was ever, a world map that we ever came up with. And we were going to build all of that, including Northrend. So it's kind of an example of how we plan more than we can actually build. And it's not that we end up cutting anything, it's just that we reprioritize and put it in a different place. And eventually it will see the light of day. This is the original dungeon lineup for World of Warcraft back in April of 2003. These were the dungeon instances that we're planning on doing. As you can see, it goes to level 70, which we later switched the level cap down to 60, and then in Burning Crusade we raised it back to 70. It also has a bunch of dungeons on there that you're now seeing come out or came out much later. What we actually shipped the game with back in 2004 of November of 2004 was this lineup. So you can see we didn't cut any content. It's the exact same number of dungeon instances. We just sort of reprioritized things. New ideas that came about. Certain things didn't fit anymore or couldn't work into the progression. So we sort of rearranged things. So you can see how much we plan ahead and then are constantly changing our plan. You're going to like this next one. This was the original Burning Crusade dungeon boss listing, kind of early in the progress of Burning Crusade. And this is what it ended up as. And I think why you're going to like it is because there's that column on the end there, the yellow column, which is our unannounced. We're not going to announce it yet, but one more raid zone before Wrath of the Lich King coming out with 6 bosses. So that's coming out soon, and it should be extremely hard, harder than Black Temple, and of course better loot than Black Temple in there. Alright, this is the Wrath of the Lich King dungeon plan as it compares to Burning Crusade. So I thought you guys would find this interesting. What's at the top of this list are the level up instances, the Hellfire Ramparts, Coil Fang. On one column we're showing Burning Crusade, on the other column we're showing what we're planning for Wrath of the Lich King. Now I can almost guarantee you that this list is going to change. We're going to add instances, we're going to remove instances, we're going to move them around on the list. Some of the important things to note, we took away from a few of our max level 5-man dungeon wings because they're not as important now that we have heroic dungeons. But one thing that's really cool is we want to do more of the 10-man instances. What our statistics have shown us, over the past few months, Karazhan is far and away the most popular instance that everybody's doing. So we've got a lot of people who like 10-man content, but not a lot of 10-man content for them. So it's something we hope to fix in Wrath of the Lich King. Also, you can see there's some raid progression there as well for 25 people. And of course, we're going to do heroic dungeons again. Just as many level up dungeons as we planned for Burning Crusade will be in Wrath of the Lich King. Alright, so that's some of our planning. Then when we get started, we obviously have to think about stuff like level. Is this a level up dungeon, a low level dungeon, kind of a high level dungeon? What's the relative difficulty? Obviously Black Temple has to be more difficult than the stuff that came before it. How many players is the dungeon for? And are we making a wing dungeon like Scarlet Monastery, or is it sort of a one-shot instance like Shadowfang Keep? Alright, progression. Progression refers to making players go through certain content to get to other content. And what's the reason that we do this? First and foremost, it's so that there's continuous challenge to the game. If everything was of equal difficulty and there was no progression between the content that was out there, the game would feel very static and sort of pointless. So we want you to always have something that you're shooting for, something new that a new mountain to climb, so to speak. That kind of gives you that sense of purpose in the game.